You open Instagram and scroll through an endless stream of faces. Selfies at golden hour, group photos at parties, carefully posed vacation shots, mirror pics with perfect lighting. Everyone seems so comfortable putting themselves out there, so eager to be seen. And then there's you. Your profile picture is probably from 3 years ago, or maybe it's a landscape, a pet, something abstract. Your feed, if you post at all, is conspicuously absent of your own face. Not because you don't take photos, you just never share them. And when people ask why, you shrug it off with something vague. I just don't like posting. But inside, there's a whole complex web of reasons. Feelings, fears that you can't quite articulate, because not posting your photo isn't just a preference. It's a statement, a boundary, a form of self-protection in a world that demands visibility. And today, we redive in deep into the psychology of people who exist on social media but refuse to show their face. Because in an age where your digital presence is supposed to mirror your real life, choosing invisibility says something profound about how you see yourself, how you see the world, and what you're protecting by staying hidden. Let's start with the most obvious question. Why, in a culture that equates visibility with relevance, why would someone actively choose to remain faceless? The easy answer is shyness or insecurity. And sure, for some people, that's part of it. But it's rarely the whole story. Because choosing not to post your photo is often less about hiding and more about preserving. Preserving your privacy, your autonomy, your sense of self, in a space that constantly tries to commodify it. Think about what happens when you post a photo of yourself. You're not just sharing an image, you're offering yourself up for evaluation, for judgment, for commentary. You're saying, here I am. What do you think? And then you wait. You wait for the likes, the comments, the validation that tells you whether you measured up, whether you're attractive enough, interesting enough, worthy enough. And for people who don't post their photos, that transaction feels fundamentally wrong. It feels like reducing yourself to a product, your worth to a metric, your existence to something that needs external approval to be real. Research in social psychology has shown that our relationship with self-presentation on social media is deeply tied to our self-concept. People with secure self-esteem, those who have a stable sense of their own worth, are less likely to seek validation through frequent photo posting. A study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals who post frequent selfies and photos of themselves tend to score higher on measures of narcissism and insecurity, not because posting photos inherently makes you narcissistic, but because the behavior is often driven by a need for external validation. When your sense of self is fragile, you outsource it, you need others to tell you you're okay. But when your sense of self is more secure, you don't need that mirror. You already know who you are, and that knowing doesn't require an audience. So for many people who don't post their photos, it's not about lacking confidence. It's about having enough confidence that they don't need to prove anything. But let's dig deeper, because there's another layer to this. Many people who do UNT post their photos have experienced something that fundamentally changed their relationship with being seen. Maybe it was a comment crew or cutting that made them realize how vulnerable visibility makes you. Maybe it was watching others get torn apart in comment sections and deciding they didn't want to subject themselves to that. Maybe it was the exhausting performance of trying to look perfect, trying to curate an image, and realizing that the person in those photos wasn't really them, that they were creating a fiction, a highlight reel version of themselves that bore little resemblance to their actual life. And one day they just stopped, not with a big announcement, just a quiet withdrawal. They put the phone down and decided that their face, their body, their life didn't need to be content, that some things could remain private, untouched by the machinery of social media. There's a concept in psychology called the spotlight effect. It's the tendency to overestimate how much other people notice and judge us. We think everyone is scrutinizing our appearance, our words, our choices, when in reality, most people are too busy thinking about themselves to pay that much attention to us. But social media amplifies this effect exponentially. Because on social media, there literally is a spotlight. Every photo you post is subject to evaluation. The likes are a visible metric of approval or lack thereof. The comments are public judgments, and for people with heightened self-consciousness, people who already tend to worry about how they're perceived, this is torture. So they opt out, not because they're avoiding all social interaction, But because they're avoiding the specific kind of interaction that social media creates, the kind where your appearance becomes a referendum on your worth, where a bad photo day can spiral into questioning your entire existence, where you're constantly comparing your real, unfiltered self to everyone else's carefully curated version. Let's talk about control, because that's a huge part of this. When you don't post photos of yourself, you maintain control over your image. You decide who sees you and in what context. You're not leaving yourself vulnerable to screenshots, to comments you can't delete, to being tagged in unflattering photos, to having your image circulate in ways you didn't consent to. In an age where everything digital is permanent, where photos can be saved and shared and manipulated, not posting is a way of protecting your autonomy. It's saying, my image belongs to me, not to the algorithm, not to the public, not to anyone who wants to consume it. And there's something deeply empowering about that. In a world that tells you that you need to be visible to matter, choosing invisibility becomes an act of rebellion. It's taking back power in a system designed to make you give it away. There's also the exhaustion factor. Posting photos, especially if you're trying to maintain a certain aesthetic or image, is work. It's emotional labor. You have to take the photo, which often means multiple attempts, different angles, perfect lighting. Then you have to edit it, choose a filter, write a caption that's clever but not trying too hard. Then you post it and wait, checking compulsively to see how it's performing. Did people like it? Are they commenting? What are they saying? And if the engagement is low, there's disappointment, sometimes even shame. But if it's high, there's pressure to maintain that level, to keep producing content that performs well. It's exhausting. And for people who don't post their photos, they've simply decided that this exhaustion isn't worth it, that the return on investment, the likes and validation doesn't justify the energy expenditure. They'd rather spend that energy actually living their life instead of documenting and packaging it for consumption. Here's something fascinating. People who don't post their photos often have a different relationship with presence. They'd be more likely to be fully engaged in the moment because they're not thinking about how it will look online. They're not interrupting experiences to get the perfect shot. They're not performing for an invisible audience. They're existing, experiencing, without the constant meta-awareness of how they'll present this later. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who frequently photograph experiences for social media actually remember them less vividly than people who just experience them directly. The act of capturing for sharing disrupts the experience itself. You're not fully present because you're already thinking about the post. But when you remove that layer, when you're not going to post it anyway, you can sink into the moment completely. And for many people who don't post their photos, that presence is what they're protecting. They've realized that documenting their life is interfering with living it. There's also a privacy element that goes beyond just control. Some people don't post their photos because they fundamentally believe that not everything needs to be shared, that there's value in having a private life, in keeping some parts of yourself for yourself and your inner circle. In an era of oversharing, this can feel almost radical, but it's actually a return to how humans lived for most of history. Your appearance, your daily life, your experiences were shared with the people physically present, not broadcast to hundreds or thousands. And for people who don't post photos, that feels right. It feels natural. They're not anti-technology or anti-social media. They might engage in other ways, commenting, sharing articles, participating in discussions, but their face, their physical self, that remains private. Because privacy isn't about having something to hide. It's about having something to protect. Your dignity, your peace, your sense of self that exists independent of public opinion. Let's address the judgment that often comes with this choice, because people who don't post photos often face assumptions. They're called antisocial, insecure, paranoid, or assumed to be hiding something. There's a cultural expectation now that if you're not visible online, something must be wrong. You must be ashamed of how you look, or you must be doing something you don't want people to know about. But this assumption reveals more about our society's values than about the person making the choice. We've become so conditioned to equate visibility with authenticity, presence with posting, that we can't imagine someone might simply prefer privacy, might prefer to keep their image and their life separate from their online presence. And this judgment creates pressure. It makes people feel like they need to justify their choice, to explain why they're not doing what everyone else is doing. But here's the thing. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your reasons are your own. Whether it's about self-protection, privacy, presence, or simply not wanting to participate in that particular aspect of social media culture, your choice is valid. Now, let's talk about the different types of people who don't post their photos, because it's not a monolith. There are people who are deeply insecure about their appearance and avoid posting because they fear rejection or criticism. For them, not posting is protective, but it also reinforces the insecurity, because by avoiding visibility, they never challenge the fear. They never get to discover that maybe people wouldn't judge them as harshly as they judge themselves. Then there are people who are comfortable with how they look, but uncomfortable with the performance aspect. They don't want to be seen as attention-seeking or vain. They don't want to participate in the popularity contest that social media can become. These people might share photos in private messages or in small group chats, but not on their public profile. Then there are people who have a philosophical objection to the culture of constant documentation and they see social media as narcissistic, superficial, or exploitative, and they refuse to feed that machine with their image. And finally, there are people who just genuinely don't think about it. They're not making a statement. They're not protecting anything. They just don't feel compelled to post photos. It doesn't occur to them as necessary or interesting. What's interesting is how this choice affects relationships. People who don't post their photos often report feeling disconnected from certain social circles, especially online communities where photo sharing is the primary form of interaction. They might get fewer likes on posts because people engage more with visual content, especially faces. They might be left out of online conversations about appearance, fashion, or lifestyle. But at the same time, they often report having deeper, more meaningful offline relationships. Because when you're not maintaining a public image, you can be more authentic in private. You don't have to worry about contradictions between your online persona and your real self. You can just be. And the people who know you, really know you through actual interaction, not through a curated feed. This creates a different kind of intimacy, a kind that's not mediated by screens or likes, a kind that's based on actual presence, actual conversation, actual shared experience. There's also an interesting gender dynamic here. Research shows that women face significantly more pressure to post photos than men. Women's worth is still, unfortunately, heavily tied to their appearance in our culture, and social media amplifies this. Women who post attractive photos get more engagement, more followers, more social capital, but they also face more scrutiny, more objectification, more unsolicited commentary on their body. So for women who choose not to post photos, there's often an additional layer. They're not just opting out of social media culture. They're opting out of a system that reduces them to their appearance, that treats their face and body as public property to be evaluated and commented on. And that decision, while liberating, can also be isolating, because the social currency of online spaces often depends on visual self-presentation, especially for women. So choosing not to participate can mean being overlooked, being deemed less interesting, being invisible in a way that men who make the same choice might not experience as acutely. Let's talk about the mental health aspect, because for some people, not posting photos is genuinely protective of their mental health. Studies have consistently shown that social media use, particularly comparing yourself to others and seeking validation through likes, is correlated with increased anxiety, depression, and low self. For people who are already struggling with these issues, posting photos can exacerbate them. Every photo becomes a source of anxiety. Will people like it? Will they think I look good? What if I get negative comments? The anticipation, the posting, the checking, the emotional roller coaster of engagement. It's too much. So they stop. And often they feel better. They report less social comparison, less appearance, anxiety, less of that desperate need for external validation. By removing themselves from that particular arena, they create space for their self-worth to stabilize, to come from internal sources rather than external metrics. And that's healthy. That's adaptive. That's self-care, even if other people don't understand it. But there's a flip side. For some people, avoiding posting photos is avoidance in the clinical sense. It's a way of not confronting insecurities or fears that might actually need to be addressed. If you're avoiding posting photos because you hate how you look, and that self-hatred is pervasive and affecting your life, then the avoidance isn't solving the problem. It's just hiding from it. The work isn't to force yourself to post photos. The work is to address the underlying beliefs about your appearance and worth, to challenge the idea that you need to look a certain way to be valuable, to build genuine self-acceptance that doesn't depend on how you look or what others think. And sometimes that requires therapy, body positive community, deliberate work on self-compassion. The point is, not posting can be either healthy or unhealthy depending on what's driving it. And only you can know which it is for you. Here's something that people who do post frequently often don't understand. Not posting photos doesn't mean you're not on social media or that you're not engaged. Many people who don't post their own photos are active consumers of content. They scroll, they watch, they observe. They're just not producing. And there's a specific psychology to this. These people are often more introverted, more reflective, more comfortable observing than performing. They're the audience, not the actors. And in a strange way, social media needs both. It needs the people creating content and the people consuming it. But our culture valorizes creators, influencers, people with big followings and high engagement. The observers are seen as passive, less interesting, less successful. But observation is its own form of participation. It's how you learn, how you understand, how you stay connected without being consumed by the need to present yourself. Let's talk about the future, because as younger generations grow up with social media as a default part of life, the pressure to be visible is only increasing. Gen Z has never known a world without smartphones and social media. For them, documenting and sharing your life isn't optional. It's expected. It's how you maintain friendships, how you stay relevant, how you exist socially. So the choice not to post photos becomes even more countercultural, even more isolating. But at the same time, there's a growing backlash. More and more people, especially young people, are talking about social media fatigue, about the toll that constant visibility takes, about the artificiality of online personas. There's a movement toward Finsta, fake Instagram accounts that are more private and authentic, toward Barrio, an app that tries to capture unfiltered moments, toward simply using social media less. So maybe the pendulum is starting to swing. Maybe we're collectively realizing that constant visibility isn't sustainable, isn't healthy, isn't even what we really want. And maybe people who don't post their photos aren't outliers. Maybe they're just ahead of the curve. So what does it mean to choose not to post your photos? It means you're prioritizing privacy over visibility. It means you're opting out of a system that commodifies your image. It means you're protecting your mental space from the anxiety of constant evaluation. It means you value presence over performance. It means you believe that your worth isn't determined by likes and comments. It means you're comfortable with a version of social media participation that doesn't center your appearance. And all of these things are valid. All of these things are okay. You don't have to justify your choice to anyone. You don't have to post photos to prove you're confident or social or interesting. You can exist on your own terms, sharing what you want, keeping what you want private. Because at the end of the day, your image is yours. Your face is yours. Your body is yours. And you get to decide what you do with them. Here's what I want people who don't post their photos to know. You're not weird. You're not broken. You're not missing out on some essential human experience. You're making a choice that feels right for you, that protects something you value, that allows you to engage with social media and the world on your own terms. And that's brave, because it's so much easier to just go along with what everyone else is doing, to post the selfies, to chase the likes, to play the game. Choosing not to requires conviction. It requires being comfortable with being different, with being misunderstood, with not fitting into the template of how we're supposed to exist online. And that takes strength. But I also want to say this. If you're not posting photos because you genuinely hate how you look, if the thought of being seen causes you real distress, if you're avoiding mirrors and cameras and any form of visibility that might be worth exploring, not because you need to start posting, but because that level of appearance-related de-stress isn't just about social media. It's about how you see yourself, and you deserve to look in the mirror and not feel pain. You deserve to exist in your body without shame. You deserve to believe that you're worthy of being seen, even if you choose not to be. So maybe the work isn't about posting or not posting. Maybe it's about getting to a place where you could post if you wanted to, where the choice is truly free rather than driven by fear or shame. And here's the beautiful thing. When you reach that place, when you're genuinely comfortable with yourself, the posting doesn't matter anymore. You might post occasionally when you feel like it without anxiety or performance, or you might never post, and that's fine too, because, your worth isn't tied to your visibility. Your face isn't public property. That being seen isn't a prerequisite for being valuable. And that knowledge, that peace, is what we're all chasing, whether we post 1,000 selfies or none at all. In a world that's constantly telling you that you need to be visible to be relevant, choosing invisibility is revolutionary. It's saying that you exist beyond the screen, that your life is real, even if it's not documented, that your face is beautiful, even if it's not photographed, that your worth is inherent, not earned through likes and followers. And maybe, just maybe, by choosing not to post, you're remembering something the rest of us forgot. That you don't need an audience to be whole. That you don't need validation to be valuable. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply exist. Quietly, privately, fully, without needing the world to watch. Because your life isn't content. It's not a brand. It's not a performance. It's yours. And keeping it yours, protecting it from the endless appetite of social media, that's not hiding. That's honoring yourself. And there's nothing more beautiful than that.